Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of the Free Web Development Bootcamp from the Bad Website Club. It's so great to have you all here. I hope you're all having just the most wonderful day and just been having the most wonderful second week of the bootcamp. We've covered so much already. I cannot wait to do today's and tomorrow's lessons with all of you. Hey, Nikita. Good to see you all. Good morning. Hope you're all doing great. Yeah, let's do some housekeeping before we get started. If you're tuning in for the first time, hi, my name's Ramon. My friend Jess and I are running these free web development boot camps. We'll be doing an HTML one, an HTML and CSS one from until the 5th or 6th of February. And then on the 9th of February, we'll kick off with an optional Q&A, the free JavaScript bootcamp. So don't miss that. If you're wondering where to find this information, let me give you the link to the schedule for this bootcamp. You'll find the link over here. And there you'll find all of the info, such as how to join our Discord group, where to find our schedule. There's a Google Calendar in there that you can use. Yeah. And let's put in a link to that Discord channel so that y'all can come in as well if you like and share with each other. Hello. Good to see folks tuning in. Yeah. Cool. So that's the Discord link. Don't be sure to miss that. Be sure not to miss that. If you're joining and you're like, oh gosh, this sounds really cool. Did I miss it? No, you didn't. So we are in week 2, but everything's recorded on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub, there you'll find not just the upcoming live streams, but also past lessons. And you find everything in there that you need. And last, code of conduct. So when you're joining this bootcamp, participating with your fellow participants, make sure that you read and abide by this. You are agreeing to it by joining. So that's bit.ly/BWC-COC. And if you see anything out of sorts, please let myself or Jess know. Hello. Oh, you are very kind to tell me I look neat. That I look okay. Well, hey, let's jump into what we're doing today. So we're going to be doing accessibility today. And this, as you can imagine, is a very exciting topic for us because Jess and I have brought it up many, many times over the last 2 weeks. And today is going to be just me, but don't worry, Jess is going to be joining us as well. So we're going to go bright and easy through all of these lessons. We're going to be doing quite a few. So you might have seen in the schedule already, we're going to be doing part 1 today, and then we're going to come back to this exercise for part 2 tomorrow. So it looks like a lot, but don't worry, we're going to make sure to cover as much of it as possible. Because as we've said several times, accessibility affects all of us. So like being able to use a website in an accessible way is important for all of us because it lets us, for example, like my favorite use case is, or for me, an important use case for myself is when I'm looking at my phone when I shouldn't, like first thing when I get up and my eyes are kind of like groggy. And sometimes when the color contrast of a piece of text is very low, we find that it's a bit difficult to read. But yeah, that's just one use case. We're going to learn a bunch of them. So we're going to use this by doing this. Oh, sorry. We're going to do this by building a quiz. Let me drop that link in there so that y'all can follow along. Great. So as said, we're going to be building a form, a little quiz here. Student name, student info, name, email, date of birth. Going to be doing some questions, some CSS stuff, and then got a send button. Oh, we've got a footer and a navigation header. That's exciting. We're going to be doing all of this today, and it looks like a lot, and that's because, well, we're going to dedicate 2 sessions to this. So we've got our boilerplate here. The first thing we're going to do, you might have noticed, is that our HTML doesn't have a lang property. And you might be, and we've already said this a couple times, we're just, really driving it home. The reason we do this is because this helps not just our browser, but other assistive devices such as a screen reader understand, oh, hey, this website is in English. I'm going to use the English voice text-to-speech engine. Yeah, so it tries to read English as opposed to, say, Spanish. And there we go. We've submitted our text. We've already got our CSS styles linked. We got our body set up. We're as good as ready to go. So cool. The next thing we're going to be doing is specifying our meta tags. We've done this before. So meta char set equals UTF 8. The reason we do this, as we've said several times, is so that we can specify to the browser, like, hey, use these kinds of letters and characters, which covers a good amount of them. Not all of them, but a good amount. Next, when it comes to accessibility, of course, very important to have that meta viewport. Add a viewport definition with a content attribute dealing with. How does this go again? I already forgot. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat. Name, that's it. Name set to be viewport. A lot of the time you already have this done. Hello, welcome. So viewport, and the content will be width, comma, initial scale. Is that it? It's been a while. Let's give it a try. No, width equals device width. See, it's been a while. Device width. And as you can see, I've forgotten this. That's because even though it sounds like we should know this by heart, we really don't. That's what documentation is for. So cool. There we go. So now we're telling it, hey, display properly on a smaller screen. Ooh, but now comes our next meta tag. And this is one I don't think we've seen before. This is the meta description tag. So what this does is tell it, oh, hold on, I did it wrong. Name is equals to description, and the content, I see how this works. And the content is set to be a description that we give to a search engine. What this is saying is that, hey, SEO, oh, we've heard of SEO. We might be seen SEO somewhere on the internet. It essentially means search engine optimization. And this is a practice of making your website rank high on a search engine as much as possible. Say if you have a cool pet store for cat, a cool cat accessory store, you want your SEO or your search engine optimization to be really good so that when somebody looks up cat accessory store, then you'll show up. And you do this, for example, by telling the search engine what your description is. One thing to note, this is not an exact science. And a search engine will use a lot of parameters to determine whether your website should rank high. But I'm not an expert in that. We're just here to program. It also helps for accessibility to tell, for example, a potential assistive technology, hey, what is this website for? So in our case, this is an accessibility quiz. So quiz for developers built with accessibility in mind. I hope that's good. And it is. Great. Let's keep going, folks. If you're following on along, don't forget that you can ask me questions, and I will try my best to answer them either now or in a little bit of a Q&A session. Great. So the title is also useful for screen readers to understand, but also for that SEO. So what do we call this? Accessible quiz. Yeah, that's a good title. It is what it does. Cool. We can go to the next challenge. Now, we're going to add the navigation bar, and you've probably seen those on a lot of websites. We have one here. This here is the navigation bar of Free Code Camp. So what we're going to do here is add a header and a main element. The header will be used to introduce the page as well as to provide a navigation menu. The main element will contain the content core to your page. So these will be next to each other. The header is going to be for that navigation, as we said, and below that is going to be the main. And remember, with semantic HTML, this tells us, hey, this is the header, this is what's on top, and this main is the main content. So the header is not really, so like, for example, for this, the fact that we are in Free Code Camp and have a menu is not really, it's not really part of the main content of the website, is it? It's this, what we're learning. So that looks good, and we'll keep going. Cool. So next we're going to add, I'm glad folks agree. Thank you very much, Eric, for your help. Yeah, so next we've got in our header, we're going to add an image, an H1, and a nav element. So IMG, which should point to this here. I notice they're not mentioning alt text, but I bet that'll come along. Oh, you can kind of see it now. It's free code camp, but written in the text is white, so I can't quite see it. But I bet we'll be fixing that shortly. The ID will be logo, and below that, H1. Close our H1. So that's HTML, CSS, quiz. Look at that. Perfect. Let's check our code. Oh, I forgot one. So what did we forget? I forgot to add my nav element, and that's new. Nav. And I bet we can guess what that is, right? IMG, H1, and nav element. Yeah, nav is short for navigation. So that's what we're going to be doing. We'll be adding a navigation to it. Cool. We did it. We can move on. Ooh. So this image that we added is an SVG, a scalable vector graphic. What does that mean? What are we dealing here with? Because a lot of images we see are you've probably seen JPG, JPEG, you've probably seen PNG or portable graphics. I don't know what the N stands for. Anyway, you've probably seen, what have we seen? GIFs, of course, for animated images. And we've also seen SVG. And what makes them special is that they're vector graphics. That means that no matter how big you make them, they won't get blurry because they're defined by vectors or very specific lines. Season's excited about SVGs, and so am I. So, network graphic. Thank you, oi, oi, oi. So IMG is assuming its default size, which is too large. This is the default size of the image. So what we can do is use a max for that width to be the largest of a set of comma separated values. Interesting. So it's going to be the maximum of either 250 pixels or 25 VWs. Do you remember VWs? We've seen VH, that's viewport height. So VW is going to be viewport width, which is how wide of a viewport or how much of the website we can see, right? So it's going to be either 250 pixels or 25% of the viewport width. Hey, don't take my word for it. Let's try it out. You're always asking, can we have the same units in both places? Well, let's try it out. So we're in our CSS now. We're going to select our image using its ID. Do you remember the ID? I think it was logo. Hashtag logo to select the ID. And the width is going to be the maximum between 100 pixels and 18 viewport width, which is pretty small. But let's see what happens when it gets a little smaller. Huh? So it seems to stay pretty small. Oyoyo is asking, can we have the same units in both places? Well, we can, but what happens here? Hold on a second. If it's the maximum of 100 and 200, we know which one the maximum of the two are, right? The maximum of these two is 200. What makes this so powerful is that, not PW, VW, is that it allows us to use a dynamic unit in combination with a static one. Absolute one, not a static one, an absolute unit. So that looks good. Don't forget to ask questions, folks. That's what we're here for. So, as described in the free CodeCamp style guide, let's open that in another tab. A lot of websites or a lot of companies or software foundations are going to have these style guides or how they should look. So for example, we can see, cool, this is what the logo should be. You can get your copy of the logo there. It can also be just the logo without the text, the colors, the typography. See, they give you check this out. They give you guides of how you should make something look like free code camp. which is very useful. So here they're saying, hey, this aspect ratio should always be 35 divided by 4. So that means 35 to the right and 4 down. That should be the ratio of the width to the height. That's called the aspect ratio. So, okay. First, we're going to change the background color to be hashtag 0A0A23. So that's not a lot of red, not a lot of green, and a little bit more of blue. Check it out. Now we can see the logo. Then we're going to use the aspect ratio property to set this to be 35 divided by 4. Now you notice I didn't set the spaces. I don't think you have to. I'm going to set them just to make it a little bit nicer to read. And then the padding, and we remember padding. Padding was, we remember the REM here. That's going to be 40% of the base font size, which by default is 16 in most times. Let's check our code. How wonderfully relaxing. It passed. All right. Now we're going to make the header take up the full width of its parent container. Then we're going to set its height to be 50 pixels. The background color will be that, and then we'll make it a flex box. Aspect ratio is new. I've never used it. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. So we're going to select our header, give it a height of 50 pixels, and the width. I remember how to do that. Full width. Be a good width to take up the full width of its parent container. That would probably be 100%. Cool. And the background color is hashtag 1B32. So that's a little bit of red, little bit of blue, green. Let me try that again. Thank you very much. It is 100%. So it's a little bit of red, little bit of green, and a little bit of blue. Cool. It doesn't quite match. I don't know if y'all can see. Like the blue is a little bit lighter than the background of the logo. I bet we're going to fix that in a minute. And then we'll make the display a flex. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. So I can't really see things anymore, but I bet we're going to fix that. Let's check our code. It is so relaxing when that happens. Okay, so H1 is going to set its color. We're going to set that color to be F1 BE32. Wait a minute, I forgot the property. Background color is going to be that. Okay. Oh, wait, the font color, not the background color. My bad. Font color we do with just color. There we go. Oh, and we're going to set the font size to be min of 5 viewport width. So 5% of the viewport width or 1.2 REM. So it's going to be the minimum of these two. So of the two right now, 5% of the viewport width, EM, thank you, is going to be the width, the size of our H1. That looks good. Does the computer agree? Yes, it does. Great. Let's just keep going. We're just blazing through this, but don't worry. If you have questions, don't forget to ask them. Hello. Welcome. So we're going to add an unordered list with the following 3 items. Now, does anybody remember how to do that? What was the HTML for an unordered list? Maybe I'll Google it while y'all tell me. Unordered list HTML. Oh, thank you. Oi. It is UL. What about list item? Could you tell me that too? You already did. Look at you. LI. Nikita says it too. UL. Amazing. Thank you. Perfect. So closing tags. Oh, and CSIM says something really important here. Uh, VW units for text is really fun. You get text that scales as you resize the window. So yeah, it becomes bigger and smaller, which is really helpful. Thank you. So we'll add LI, and then we'll close LI. And we're going to have 3 list items. You know what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be lazy. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. It is indeed UL. There we go. We got 3 bullet points. So I'm going to write info here in all caps. I bet we're going to address why that's probably not the most accessible way to do it. But great, there it is. Oh, hold on. You see that? I can't read it. That's because the color contrast is too low. I bet we're going to be fixing that in a minute. Whoops. Oh, we should nest one element inside each LI element. Oh, yeah. See, this is why I should read things. The list items text should be wrapped in anchor tags. Anchors, remember, it's the link. There's one. And there's the other. Ah, much better. Does it work? Yes. Amazing. Ooh. So now we're going to be using the child combinator selector. And I bet this is going to seem real familiar. So we're going to be using the bigger than selector to target the unordered list elements within the nav elements and use flexbox to evenly space the children. Let's do that second one first because I feel like I can do that. So nav will have a display of flex and we will do, if we want to evenly space it, we want to do that with justify content space evenly. I still can't read a darn thing. Ooh, I love what Cesium's saying here. Fun fact, the way they teach us to create the nav in this lesson is a method I use in basically every website I make now. That's great to know. Li will target the Li elements in there, but is that right? That doesn't feel right. No. You should. Oh, silly me. That's why it wasn't working. So now I'm targeting my nav bar. Now it's displayed in flex. Now the unordered list is displayed in flex, and the content is justified evenly. However, you might be wondering, it says evenly. So Amanda says space around, but it says here's evenly space. So I think it should be spaced evenly. I could be wrong. We'll check it out yet. So you might be wondering, cool, but why don't I just use this? This is the same, isn't it? It's the UL inside a nav. And it is true. But this is going to be a little bit weird. The bigger than says only the ULs that are a direct child of the nav. Now you might be wondering, wait, what? Let's go to the HTML and I'll show you what I mean. So nav has one child, which is UL. It is a direct child. However, LI is not, it is a descendant of nav, but it's not a direct child of nav. So nav bigger than LI would not let us do that. If we use nav and then LI, we would be able to. This lets us, in a very powerful way, use CSS to target only the ULs that are direct descendants of nav. But hey, that's enough of me talking. Let's try it out. Ah, it works. I love folks encouraging each other to check out each other's projects and stuff. Please keep doing that. Okay, still can't read it, but I bet we're going to fix that in a bit. Because next what we're going to do is use a form, and we're going to separate the content using section elements. So we're going to add 3 nested section elements. So we have a form. We're going to close our form. And inside that form, we're going to have 3 sections. Are we lazy? I'm lazy. I'm going to copy paste. Copy, paste, paste. Form section, section, and section. That's 3 sections. Then we need to make the form submit to this URL, this address, using the correct method. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the method is going to be post. Remember, we learned that when we made our first forms. And I don't remember what the attribute for where we submit to is. So how about we go to MDN real quick? Form. It's action. So the action is where the form submits to. But you see, I forget this stuff all the time. There it is. Okay, cool. So method post action this website. We're good. Are we? Yes. Oi, 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 you can catch all those sessions in YouTube. So, now we're going to increase the page accessibility by using the role attribute. This is some extra information that can tell an assistive device, such as a screen reader, hey, what is the purpose of this? For example, this role for each section will be a region of the form. So that way, when we're consuming this website on an assistive device, it'll know, oh, the purpose of this is to be a region of the form. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Yeah, so each of these sections is a region. Now, I might be wondering, well, it's a section. Why do I need to say it's a region? This is because it helps us with that assistive device give some more information. This is a region. This section is a region of the form. Let's check our code. Oh, Eric's asking, is it nav bigger than UL? That is indeed it. So we're targeting all of the ULs that are direct descendants of nav. Cool. So we're going to be giving each of these regions a label to say what region of the form this is. And we're going to be doing this with the ARIA labeled by attribute. Remember, a labeled by is a way of telling HTML. ARIA is a standard for accessibility. So this will tell the assistive device, hey, this region is about student info. This region is about HTML questions. This region is about CSS questions. Then we're going to give each section an H2 so sorry, my brain just reset there for a second. We're going to give each section an H2 with an ID that has the same area labeled by. What this does is say, hey, this H2 is the label of this region. Nikita's asking, how is that different from doing a normal label with a normal label for? Remember that the label for is for a field. What we're doing with the sections, role, and regions is a label for the section of the form, the collection of fields. And we're telling it with this H2. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. So let's start with this first one. We'll give it the ARIA labeled by student-info. Remember, there's no spaces. And we'll have an H2 in here. Let me see if I can write that correctly. And this will have the ID that corresponds to that labeled by student info. So this H2 with this ID needs to match this area labeled by. So this ID student info says to this accessibility attribute, hey, the label of this section is whatever's inside here. Again, section has a label, and that label is this H2. It is a bit confusing, and the reason it's a bit odd is because, how can I put this? When HTML was first designed, this wasn't a part of the consideration. I like what Stephen B says here. Area labeled by is just an attribute of the section element that won't be seen. Label is its own element and contains text to be displayed on the page. Exactly. So this ARIA labeled by is going to be indicated that this H2 is the label. So if we write, exactly. So as Oyoyoy says, whatever we write in that H2 will be the region name for that section. Exactly. It'll tell the assistive device, hey, the title of this section, the label, is whatever's inside here. And don't worry, it becomes a lot more straightforward once you do it a couple times. Let's do it a couple times. So area labeled by set to be. Let's see what we got. HTML questions. HTML questions. And then in this section, we're going to do the same with the H2. ID set to be HTML questions. So whatever the content of this H2 is going to be indicated to the assistive device that that is the title or label of this section. Next is CSS questions. So ARIA labeled by CSS questions H2 H2 ID is set to be CSS questions. There we go. Let's see if it works. So I did do something wrong. Oh, I forgot to give the first H2 element suitable text content. Hint, I would have chosen student info. Yeah, that makes sense. So I need to put the content in those H2 elements. Student info. Then we've got HTML questions. And then CSS questions. So now CSS questions is the label or title of each region here. Nikita's asking, so we should do it for every logical section. For this form, that absolutely makes sense. So if we have more sections, we should do more ARIA labels. Oh, VB Good Programmer's got a question here. I'm going to take your question. Then at the end of the session, we'll talk a little bit about it. Yeah. So, but that's a great question. So now we're going to be doing typeface, which plays an important role for the accessibility of a page. Some fonts are easier to read than others. Ooh, this is especially true on low resolution screens. We're going to change the font for both the H1 and H2 elements to Verdana, and then use another web-safe font in the sans serif family as a fallback. Okay. So for both H1 and H2, so that's H1, comma, H2. We're going to set the font family to be Verdana with the fallback of sans serif. Well, it looks like that worked. Then we'll add a border bottom of 4. Oh, only to H2. My bad. So only for H2, we'll add a border bottom of 4 pixels, solid, hashtag DFDFE2. There we go. We can see we've got a nice little underline to make each section distinct. Steven's asking, is ARIA labeled by only an attribute for sections, or can it be used to link other elements? It can absolutely be used on other elements. It's a great question. Cool. We'll submit and go to the next challenge. Ooh. Now this is interesting. We're going to give each element a each link here a href or a link where it goes to. Hi, Joshua K. Goldberg. We're going to give each of them a href or where they go according to the ID of the corresponding H2 elements. Wait, what? How do you link to an ID? I'll show you. So first thing we got to do is take a look at what those ID are because I already forgot. So the H2 has an ID of student info. This one has HTML-questions, and this one has CSS-questions. Cool. So for HTML, I'm going to go ref. Now, how do I link to an ID? I'll tell you. Hashtag, and then the ID. HTML questions. Sorry, that's student info. Info. Then this ref is going to be hashtag HTML questions. And this is going to be linking to CSS questions. Before I try them out, look, they've gone blue. Before I try them out, let's just see that our code works, which it does. Now, you're probably wondering, wait, why on earth would I want to do this? Why do I want to link to an H2? Here's the thing. Right now, they don't do much. Well, kind of move a little bit, but not really. These are called anchor links. And what they do is they let you, let's say, actually, why say when we can do? Can we? Now, we'll do it later. Sorry. What this will do is if there's more content on this page, these sections will be need to scroll down to. So by clicking here, it'll scroll me automatically down to that relevant section. So if I click on student info and I'm like at the bottom of the page, then it'll scroll back up to student info. Oi says, so when we click on them, they will move to that section or div, I think, with that ID in the ref. Exactly. It'll scroll to that section, which is super handy. Cool. I said, if you have questions, just feel free to keep interrupting me. First of all, you're never interrupting me. All right. Now, below our student info ID, so that's our H2, we're going to add 3 elements that are divs. Remember, divs are just empty rectangles. And they will all have the class of info. And then with each div nest 1 label and 1 input. Do I sense copy-paste laziness? Absolutely. So that'll be info. And inside each div, I'm going to have another div. No, the label. And I need to close the label. Don't I? Yeah, that makes sense. And input. Remember, input is self-closing. Now, if that looks good, then I should be able to copy-paste it. 1, 2, 3. Wish me luck, everybody. Oh my goodness, it worked on the first try. That's always something that's kind of funny with programming where you're like, wait, it worked on the first try? Something must be wrong. But yeah, sometimes it works. Cool. So that's the div with a label and an input. And there's 3 of them. We don't see the labels and we know why, right? Because they have no content. Let's go to the next challenge. Look at us. We're making so much progress. We're already on step 20. Remember that I am going to give you all a bit of a homework, but tomorrow we'll continue from a certain standpoint. And I'll let you all know what that homework is. So we're going to link each input. Oh yeah, we remember that. We're going to link each input to the corresponding label. That way we can tell the assistive technology users which visual reference to that input has to which label. And we've done this. We did this last week, I think. Each label has a for attribute, which contains the ID of the input. Structurally, this will probably seem familiar, won't it? Because it's just like how we use the ARIA labeled by and the H2s. ARIA labeled by for the section and the ID for the H2. Okay, so the section will take the student's name, email address, and date of birth. Give the label components appropriate for attributes as well as text content. Then link the input elements to the corresponding label elements. Okay, that sounds like a lot of work. Let's do one at a time. First, the student name. So the label is going to be for, I'm going to go with name. I feel pretty good about that. Name colon as the content. And then the input is going to have the ID of name. And that's it. Let's do it for the next one. See, that wasn't so bad. For, what do we got? Email address? Yeah, let's just call it email. Email address. And the input is going to have the ID of email. And last is the date of birth. So that's labeled for date dash. Remember, IDs can't have spaces of birth. And then the input ID here is date of birth. One thing I forgot, the content, date of birth. Oh my goodness, that looks like a lot, and I hope it's good. Let's find out. Oh, wow. We're killing it today, my friends. All right, let's keep going. So now that we know a little bit about how inputs work from last week, we should probably set the appropriate name and type. Now, hold on a minute. Name, type? Have we done this before? We did a little bit. Let me show you all what's up. So our input should have a type. For a typo, we're going to type in a name. I feel like a good type would be text. Whoops. I just opened my DevTools. Did not mean to do that. Text. But we don't see much of a difference. In fact, if I ever want to look at a list of what types of input types there are, I can go to MDN, look up input. I'm going to link this to y'all so you don't have to. Input types. Oh, there it is. Just going to link that so that y'all can take a look. It's useful info to have. So we got buttons. Oh, look, I even show them. Checkbox, color. I didn't know there was a color one. Oh, wow, I feel silly. Okay, so there's a color input type, dates, date and time, email addresses, files, we did that. Hidden, not shown, image, month. Didn't know you could be able to like display an image. A graphical submit. Oh, it's an image submit button. Interesting. Oh yeah, numbers, we've done that. Passwords. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of types. I'm not going to keep us too long with that. Sorry. I get distracted with that. So cool. We've given it a type. Then we want to give it a name. Does anybody remember what the name is for? I think a good name here would be student name. And then we've got the placeholder. Now, what's a placeholder? So we got a placeholder here that does insert name here. ... Yeah, there we go. So that's a placeholder so that when I click on it, it lets me type in stuff, but it doesn't submit it as that. It's just telling me like, hey, this is the kind of thing you want to put in here. So let's go back to the name real quick, because this looks just like the ID. And it doesn't have to be. I just use it for consistency's sake. The name part of an input is the name of the field that's going to show up on the server when we submit the form. What? It means, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Hey, backend developer person, when you're programming your server, I'm going to send you the data in the form of student name. Yeah? So this is just how the field is going to show up when we submit it to somewhere. Okay, cool. So we've made our name. Cool. Does that work? Oh, I should do it for all three. Well, that's silly of me. So Where is that? Student email. Okay. So the input should be of type email. The name, I'll call it the same as the ID, student dash email. And do we need a placeholder? No, right? Because it said, hold on, let me double check. Give the first input a placeholder attribute. Fantastic. And then for the birth date, let's make the type date. Look, it changed. We'll play it with it in a second. And that'll be a name of birth date. And isn't it amazing that all of this is built into the browser so you can just like have a date picker and set it to be, let's make it 100 years in the future just for fun. January 18th, 100 years later. See, that's how you can have a date picker. Let's try that again. Oh, much better. I was nervous that I was doing it completely wrong. Great. As always, friends, if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye. Ooh. So even though you added a placeholder to the first input element, this is not actually a best practice for accessibility. And too often users confuse the placeholder text for an actual input value. They think there's already a value in the input. So what this is saying is like, oh, a user might come along and say like, oh, I guess this is already filled in. I won't fill it in. So this is not a best practice. So we're going to remove that placeholder. And we're going to rely on the label being the best practice. So that we're going to rely on the label telling us what we need to put in here. Does that look good? And it does. Ooh. Okay, so when the exercise writer called this DOB, and this is not descriptive enough, and this is especially true for folks who have visual impairments. And one way to get around such an issue without having to add more text here is to add text that only a screen reader can read. Ooh. So let me do that here. Add a span element to the text content of the third label element. So inside here, we've got DOB. Inside that, we're going to add a span with the class SR only. I don't think they told us to add text, right? Let's give it a try. Yep, we don't. We're going to be adding that text in a minute. So within that span element, we're going to add the text in brackets, date of birth. Now hang on just a dang minute. It's still there. What's going on? I bet we're going to find out. So this looks good, but I bet we have to do something with CSS. So the SR only text is still visible. We're going to be adding a pattern of, these CSS properties. Okay, position absolute. Absolute means that we can put it wherever we like. Width and height are each 1 pixel. There's no padding. The margin is -1 pixel. It's not overflowing. It barely shows up. There's no white space in it. And the border is 0. Nikita's asking the screen reader would still read DOB, right? That is correct. So we'd go DOB and then date of birth. Okay, so we're kind of just like, it is technically there, but we're just like hiding it from us, the people who would be able to see it. Did I do that right? Look at me not being able to read. Okay, so now it's gone, but it's still there in the content. So a screen reader would still read it. Can I explain a little bit about position? Yeah, totally. Tell you what, I'll do you one better. Let's take a tiny little break here, submit and go to the next challenge. Question blocks. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of question blocks and then I'll let y'all go and we'll do some Q&A. So let's go to position real quick. So the position property is going to tell us how an element is positioned inside a document. I'm going to send y'all a link as well. Boop. So in this demo, you can control the position property of the yellow box. Look at that. So by saying it's static, it stays there. If it's relative, we've moved it down 40 pixels from the top and 40 pixels from the left. See, the bigger this value, the further to the left I move it. Further from the left I move it, sorry. What about absolute? Now it's 40 pixels down and 40 pixels to the left from the top of the document, from the top of the viewport. And then there's sticky. Right now, the position is sticky, 20 pixels down. But what does sticky mean? Check this out. I always love this. Wait. Oh, yeah, there we go. Look. It stays sticky. So up until it shows up, then it's like, yeah, I'm going to stay here. You can't get rid of me. So absolute means that we're displaying it somewhere else. So what we essentially did to our date of birth in brackets, we just moved it off to the side. Oh, we got to move it more. 80. Now it's gone. Eric also says you could also make name a required field so that when people skip it, they get a warning to fill it in. Absolutely. I'll tell her, Jess. I'll tell her you asking. Oh, yeah, Jess is doing great. She's wonderful. Okay, back to here. I hope that answers your question, VVK programmer. Okay, so within our section, a second section element, we're going to add 2 div elements with a class of question block. Okay, we're going to do a couple more of these and then we'll wrap up just a touch early and then come back full force tomorrow. So class is set to be question block. We're going to have 2 of those, right? No, within each div question block element, add 1 p element with the text of incrementing numbers starting at 1. What? And 1 field set element with a class of question. Okay. So. Oh, okay. So P will be 1. And we'll have a field set with a class of question. Whoops. Sorry. And then close that. Field set. But we need 2 of them. I'm just going to copy paste this because I'm lazy and change that 1 to a 2. Now I have 2 questions. The question is, does that look okay? It does. How wonderful. So each field set will contain a true or false question. Within each field set, nest 1 legend element and 1 UL element with 2 options. Okay. Within each field set, nest 1 legend element and 1 UL element with 2 LIs. It doesn't say what those elements should be, so I'm just going to leave them as is. Yep, copy pasting because I'm lazy. And that looks good. So we're going to give each field set an adequate name attribute, and then give both unordered lists a class of answers list. Then we're going to use legend to caption the content of the field set by placing a true or false question as the text content. Okay. So first we're going to do field set with a name attribute. That field set, remember the name is the name of the field that gets passed to the server. Let's go with, well, what should be our first HTML question? A true or false question. A an HTML quiz. Nikita's saying we didn't do a form element in this exercise. Is that not bad for accessibility? Do bear in mind, Nikita, we did one. Hold up. Where is it? I know I wrote it. There it is. The whole thing's a form. Now I need some fun questions. What are some fun true or false questions about HTML? How about the first one would be something like, we'll keep it simple. UL ordered. Hear me out. Don't apologize. You're good. So the legend, remember that's the question itself. UL, or let me do that properly. UL is an ordered list. And then here we're going to do true and false. Is that correct? Give both unordered lists a class of answers list. My bad. I'm not supposed to write true or false, but this UL is supposed to have the class of answers list. So now we need a second question. What's the second question? What would be a good one? Oh, Stephen B., I'm going to come back to your question as soon as I'm done here because we will. You are a fantastic student. Oi, oi, oi. You all are fantastic students. Your question is fantastic, Stephen B. I'm going to come back to it. Hey, learner. Okay, so legend. We need a second question. What would be a good true or false question? Oh, I know. Div is short for divider. That's a good one. And the name needs to be name div question. Div divider. True or false. That we need class to be set to be answers list. Hopefully. Oh my goodness. Somehow I actually made that pass. Okay. We're at step 29 today. Friends, this is where we're going to stop for today. Let me give you all some homework before we do a very short burst of Q&A, and then I'll let you go enjoy the rest of your day. So we are at step 29, and by tomorrow, so tomorrow we're going to pick this up again. Let me just double check that I get the one right, because I think we wanted to start from. Yes, we're going to start from step 41 tomorrow. So the homework is to do everything from 29 until 40. So tomorrow we'll start here with 41. Okay? We did a lot. This is mean. I'm sorry to give you all so much homework, but you are so patient and good and just wonderful. So how about we wrap up today with a little bit of Q&A, because there are some questions in here that I definitely want to answer. And if you've got any more, please bring them in. So the first in, I have a question. Even when I study HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I can't do my own project without the help of platforms. I feel like I need to learn more. What should I do? Cool. One piece of advice that I was given that I really appreciated was like, how do I know when I'm ready to start, like, you know, applying to jobs or doing more dedicated, bigger projects with HTML, CSS, and web technologies in general? And that's when I feel like I can build something without a tutorial. Now, I don't mean that you can't ever use tutorials, but rather that you, with the help of documentation, you can build your own thing with the help of smaller tutorials that help you do a very particular part, but not a tutorial where you go from zero to finished product. really a tutorial to be like, for example, how to set up a form. That would be one. But your question is, what should I do in order to learn more? And I feel like what helps me is when I'm doing these tutorials that go from 0 to 100 to just play around with them. As Jess says, get weird. Change some minor parts. For example, I don't know, change in our styles here, make this color my favorite, Rebecca purple. No, going with violet, my actual favorite color. Okay, that's the text color. Get a little weird, get a little experimentative. Expand, but don't be like I would expand that in very small ways. Like for example, maybe you want to make like a giant Pokemon database or something. Start smaller. Maybe see how you can how you can display a series of images of Pokemon first, and then go from there. Oh, I like what Learner says here. Pick the right tools for the trade. Dummel says, div is not a short for divider anymore. This is an ancient description in HTML4 and earlier. Div is only a container for children nowadays. Well then, it looks like this true or false question probably has a false answer. I want to answer Stephen B's question. So position absolute is a surprising inclusion for me for the SR only boilerplate. It seems that it's placing the element at the top left of the page, which is correct. Is that suggesting that screen readers ignore the visible rendered version of the homepage and build their own DOM, if you will, directly from the HTML file? How else would a screen reader know to read date of birth after DOB? And you know what, Stephen B? It's kind of the other way around. Let's look at that DOB. I'm going to open up my DevTools. And don't worry, we'll get to using DevTools in depth later on. So check it out. What a screen reader is actually doing is reading this, the content, the DOM, the HTML. Now, as far as that's concerned, DOB is there, and so is date of birth. The problem is we've chucked date of birth so that it's not visible here in the content, but it is still here. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So Eric's asking, why is div still being used in this course? This is a great question. So maybe div is not short for divider anymore. I don't have the answer to that. And quite frankly, it doesn't change its utility. So divs are still used for doing things like having empty rectangles. So yes, divs are always going to be used. Like divs are to this day quite possibly the most commonly used element. Div is only how to center a div lately. I love that. Learner's asking, does Free Code Camp use Monaco? You know what, Learner? I was just on the style guide for Free Code Camp. Let's find out. Monaco font. So let's see what we got. The font is Roboto Mono, Lato, Sax Mono, Menlo. But you're talking about the editor. This is probably Monaco. I could be wrong. Okay. I think that's all of the questions. Don't worry, folks. We're going to be back tomorrow, back at this accessibility thing. So tomorrow. We start at step 41. Yeah, don't worry. I'm doing it again. So we're going to do, your homework is do everything from step 29 to 41. And then tomorrow we'll start from 41. One more thing before I let you all go to enjoy your day. I have a little bit of a treat for you. You might have seen it already on Discord or the calendar, but Cesium is very kindly going to be doing an extra session for us today. Here, let me tell you what. Let me hop over to the Bad Website Club website. I'll open up the Free Web Development Bootcamp, and here's the calendar. In that calendar, you will see a new entry that's happening in 1 hour from now. Hold on, let me double check that. I'm bad at times. Bad Website Club. Is it in 1 hour from now? Give me 1 sec, everybody. It is indeed in 1 hour from now. If you head over to Cesium's YouTube channel, you'll be able to check them out, and they'll be doing the tribute page project. So go join them. Here's the YouTube link. That's youtube.com/at cesium coding. Cesium is wonderful and has been helping us with the boot camp, sharing lots of experiences and joy. So go do it. Go check it out. Oyo is asking, will they be doing it on Twitch? Sadly, it'll only be on YouTube. Oh, my bad. Sorry, it's not the tribute page. It's the survey form. So go check that out in 1 hour from now on Cesium's YouTube channel. Okay, folks. Don't give yourself more work, Cesium. They say we can talk about both projects if folks want to. Yeah, I would say go hang out with Cesium. They're going to do wonderful stuff. And I hope that this helps a little bit to also to sort of take away that sort of like hesitation that comes from doing our own stuff. But that's enough from me, everybody. I'm going to let you all go. Remember, we'll meet tomorrow, same time, and we'll keep doing this accessibility quiz. And until then, I'll wish you just the most wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.